Welcome back. You're watching Talk Asia. Our special guest today is Jim Rogers. Do you ever sort of pinch yourself that a boy from Alabama, who, in a town so small, I think the family telephone number was number 5, that you became a king of Wall Street, you became an author, a best-selling author, an inveterate globetrotter, and a very wealthy man along the way? Did you ever imagine it would end up like this?
Andrew, I still consider myself just a simple person from Alabama. I don't think about all those other things you talked about. I don't have much use for money. I don't own a car. My wife owns a car now. You know, I've never owned more than one house. I mean, I never owned an airplane. I don't really have much use for money. I just like having fun. These days, I'd rather do nothing more than just play with my daughter. I mean, I'm a simple person.
Okay, let's talk about your early days. You're a history major from Yale. You went to Oxford University from there. You took politics, economics and philosophy, a small stint in the military, and then to Wall Street. The Wall Street doesn't quite fit into that picture. Why Wall Street?
My passion has always been, my excess has always been the world and what's going on in the world. And suddenly I found a place that would pay me, and pay me a lot of money, if I could just tell and figure out what was going to happen in the world and what was going to happen in the future. I couldn't believe it. They wouldn't have had to pay me. I would have done it for free.
What specifically, what was the interest? Was it the politics? Was it the economic, sort of how the economy is interweaved?
How it all interacted together. If there's a revolution in Chile, it's not just a revolution in Chile. It affects the price of copper. It affects a lot of things. When the price of copper skyrockets, a lot of other things. There are a lot of knock-on effects. This was all fascinating to me. It's a three-dimensional puzzle with, you know, it's all, and the pieces are always changing. It's such a unbelievable challenge. But you got, and every day they come in and they change the pieces in the three-dimensional puzzle, and you got to figure out, oh my gosh, what about Chile? It might turn into a revolution. Or what about Malaysia? You know, something could happen in Malaysia. You got to put this puzzle. This is so fascinating to me. I couldn't believe it.
1973. You're 30 years old. You start co-managing a fund with another colleague called George Soros. And over the next 10 years, the quantum fund goes up 4,200% or so. You both become legends, I guess, in Wall Street. Why do you think both of you managed to get it so right so often?
Well, I mean, we worked very, very hard. We were both very intense and passionate about what we were doing. We loved it. We both had an international approach at a time when most didn't. We both understood how it, well, apparently, I mean, looking back on it, apparently we understood how it worked, you know, this three-dimensional puzzle, how the North Sea interacted with Australia, which interacted with Canada, which interacted with Detroit. You know, I don't know how we did it, but it was an exhilarating time. We did a very good job. We got it right a few times and made a few bucks.
Do you remember how much money you made during those years, personally?
I made enough to retire, I know that. Looking back on it, it was not a whole lot of money in today's standards, but in those days, for a poor boy from Alabama who didn't really need a lot of money, it was plenty for me to stop.
And then you retired, as you say. You're on top of the heap on Wall Street. Why quit?
I'd always wanted to have more than one career. Since I was like 17 years old, I used to say, I'm going to do more than one thing in life. I always wanted to see the world on a motorcycle. I mean, and I didn't need much money. I mean, as I said, I'm a simple person, so I didn't need a whole lot of money. I used to think if I could get $12,000, I could go around the world. This is a long time ago, you know.
Well, you famously wrote a book from your travels, Investment Biker. Did you set out with the idea of writing a book about your travels and looking specifically at investment opportunities along the way?
I certainly didn't plan to write a book. The only reason I wrote a book is because the night I got back, I happened to be sitting next to the head of a magazine, and he said, I want to do a story about this. And that turned into a book.
What sort of investments do you remember making in those days? I mean, what are the wackier ones?
Well, I remember in 1991 driving into Botswana and saying, my goodness, what is this country? This is a spectacular country. So I went down to find out if they had a stock exchange. They did. They'd never seen anything like me. I'd never seen anything like them. I bought every share on the stock exchange. But lest you think I'm a big hit, only 7 companies listed on the stock exchange. But I bought
bought the lot?
No, I bought shares in every company. I didn't buy, I didn't buy the country. I know, but as more and more shares came to market over the years, I bought more. I remember going into Peru. They were in the Shining Path. There's a horrible civil war going on. But I went down to find the stock exchange. They thought I was nuts. Don't you know there's a war going on in this country? So I went down and bought shares, which turned out to be terrific. No, I had a few things that turned out to be fine.
How did this trip, this personal odyssey really, how did it change your views on investing?
Well, it made me understand even more that if you see the world from the ground up, you really understand it a whole lot better than if you read about it in the press, or if you fly into an international airport and get a limousine down to the five-star hotel and go see the government minister. Listen, I know what he's going to say. I can say it better than he can, Andrew. I've been doing this for 40 years.
And most analysts still do that, do you think?
Of course if they do it. If they even do that much. Most of them don't even need to go home. They just sit and watch CNN and see how the world is, or so they think.
10 years later, you wrote another book. Just on the broader sense, what were the trends you discovered, or what had changed globally in those 10 years which you could lock onto as an investor?
Well, you can certainly see in spades the rise of Asia and the rise of China. Just unbelievable changes that are taking place. Different country, different world. You could also see that Russia continued to disintegrate and fall apart, and that there was nobody putting any money into infrastructure or into capital improvement or to productive capacity. Africa, you could see parts of Africa. I used to be extremely optimistic about Africa after my first trip, made a lot of investments. But on my second trip, I came to realize, wait a minute, it's not all the same. There are over 50 countries in Africa. And a lot of these guys come in, they do well for a while, but then power corrupts. Now, I've read about power corrupts all my life. Boy, you get to some of these countries and you see it in spades. Boy, it hits you in the head.
Just want to go back to your motorbike trip. From that trip, what did you learn about yourself?
It came home to me more that I'm sort of a maverick, that I'm a loner, that I like to do things my way, and that's okay. That there's nothing wrong with it. People have to learn about themselves, and I guess at times in my life I didn't quite understand it, or tried to be somebody that I wasn't. Go around the world on a motorcycle, you come to realize a lot about yourself. You don't have a whole lot of time to sit and watch TV or something.
Me, as an average Joe, has 20,000 US dollars to spend as an investment. What would you advise me to do with it?